If you've ever had this feeling that something was terribly wrong with the world that we live in, but you couldn't figure out just what it was, then you've come to the right place. Secret societies, mystery religions, and the Illuminati have been controlling our reality since the beginning of time. But not anymore, because there is an awakening happening, and you are about to become a part of it. Wake up, because this is a call for an uprising.
This is a call for an uprising. Welcome to today's show. Well, if you haven't heard, there's another movie being pushed featuring cannibalism, witches. Let's take a look. You might be familiar with the tale of Hansel and Gretel, but now it's called Gretel and Hansel, which of course people will say, well, why would they reverse it? Well, they do everything in reverse, right? Aleister Crowley's law of reversals. So instead of Hansel and Gretel, it's Gretel and Hansel. And, well, you could take a look for yourself at the disturbing trailer.
A fairy tale has a way of getting into your head. Make your acquaintance. I'm called Gretel, and this rough one here is my brother Hansel.
There's too much, and it isn't right.
You're scared.
There's something wrong here.
I'd hate for you to start something you can't stop.
Now we see all sorts of things. Of course, the house is a giant pyramid. They do the all-seeing eye symbolism. But let's talk a little bit about the fact that we live in a country where in school, Hansel and Gretel, this is no joke. In school, this is supposedly a fairy tale that is taught to children. What the plot is, Hansel and Gretel are a young brother and sister kidnapped by a cannibalistic witch living in a forest in a house constructed of cake, candy, and many more treats. The two children escape their lives by outwitting her. This is stuff that's taught in school in this country. Anybody got a problem with that? Anybody, a little suspicious as to why this is getting taught in school to children? A story about witches, cannibalism? Sounds a lot like the stuff that I talk about on this channel, which people think we're completely insane for believing this, yet we're constantly being desensitized by fairy tales, quote unquote, about the same exact stuff. The plot of this, if you're not familiar, in addition to what I read, Hansel and Gretel, the children of a poor woodcutter. A famine settles over the land. The woodcutter's wife decides to take the children into the woods and leave them there to fend for themselves so she and her husband will not starve to death. What a wonderful tale, by the way, to tell kids about, how the parents abandoned the children. The woodcutter opposes the plan, but finally, reluctantly submits to his wife's scheme. Unaware that Hansel and Gretel have overheard them after the parents have gone to bed, Hansel sneaks out of the house and gathers as many white pebbles as he can, then returns to his room, reassuring Gretel that God will not forsake them. The next day, the family walks deep into the woods, and Hansel lays a trail of white pebbles. And after their parents abandon them, Hansel and Gretel follow the trail back home. When their stepmother sees them, she is furious and locks them in the house. Hansel and Gretel are unable to escape or even simply collect pebbles. The following morning, the family treks into the woods. Hansel then takes a slice of bread, leaves a trail of breadcrumbs for them to follow home. However, after they are once again abandoned, they find that birds have eaten the crumbs, leaving them lost in the woods. After days of wandering, they follow a beautiful white bird to a clearing in the woods and discover a large cottage built of gingerbread cakes and candy with window panes of clear sugar. Hungry and tired, the children begin to eat the roof when the door opens and a hideous old hag emerges and lures the children inside with the promise of soft beds, delicious food, and a hot bath. They do this unaware that their hostess is a bloodthirsty witch who built the gingerbread house to waylay children for one of her occult rituals by cooking and eating them. And again, this is a fairy tale taught to children the age of kindergarten, first grade, second grade. And it's considered a fairy tale. And now, of course, it's a horror movie. The next morning, the witch throws Hansel into a cage and enslaves Gretel. The witch feeds Hansel regularly to fatten him up. Hansel realizes this and uses the witch's tendency to his advantage. Every time the witch checks how fat Hansel is, by way of seeing Hansel's finger, he sticks out a bone in the cage. Because of the witch's blindness, she is fooled into thinking Hansel is too thin to eat. After weeks of the same result, the witch grows impatient and decides to eat Hansel anyway. And it's great stuff, right? Kids really can learn a lot from it. They actually can. I mean, they can learn that the occult's real. Witches really do exist. These people are cannibals. And no, I'm not talking about some idiot who thinks that they're a witch because they, do a couple pagan rituals on YouTube and they think that's what, being a real witch is, because it's really watered down. The same with people who are in the Satanic Temple. They're like, whoa, I'm not doing that, because they get a certificate in the mail. I'm talking about people who actually practice deep into the occult. You follow Crowley's teachings, follow these, just sickening rituals that they do. Anyway, this is the end of the story. The next day, the witch prepares the oven for Hansel, but decides she's hungry enough to eat Gretel too. She coaxes Gretel to open the oven and prods her to lean over in front of it to see if the fire is hot enough. Gretel, sensing the witch's intent, pretends she does not understand what she means. Infuriated, the witch demonstrates, and Gretel pushes her into the oven, leaving the ungodly creature to be burned to ashes. What a great story for kids, even though, at the end of the day, the witch does get burned. But, we don't want to have any hate speech here against witches or promote any type of violence. But that's just the story of Hansel and Gretel. Now, the movie, of course, that's coming out is a horror movie, but how many times do we need to see witches, and witches for people to think, at least maybe scratch their head and go, wow, is witches real? Why are we always talking about witches if it's fake? Can somebody come up with something new, right? Can somebody come up with some type of a new creature, a new character? Or we just constantly have to talk about magic and witches all the time, and then you want to tell me that I'm insane for thinking that it's real because they're using predictive programming and deflection, and everything that they're saying is fiction is truly reality, and then everything that you see on the news, which is really fiction, people think is the reality of the world we live in. But this is nothing new, because as you've seen on this channel, I've covered all of these shows month after month of movies, television shows, Netflix series, from Sabrina the Teenage Witch being redone, featuring the Baphomet, of course, all over the place, and the pentagrams, the same satanic symbols. Of course, you see the pentagram in the logo for this movie as well, the same pentagram that the Satanists use, the Satanic Temple use. But of course, they're all, wouldn't it be like the same thing? Because they all go, well, we're not Satanists, we're not occultists, even though we use the, the pentagram as our symbol. Isn't that like the same as you saying, like, you're starting your own company and you want to make shoes and you use Nike's logo? Somebody be like, isn't that Nike's logo? And you're calling it Dikey or something like that. Wouldn't somebody be like, wait a minute, you're using the same exact thing? Or like, somebody using the cross to represent Christianity. And they're like, no, but we're not this isn't a church that believes in Jesus Christ. They'd be like, well, you probably shouldn't use the cross, because if the cross is out front, people are going to drive by. They're going to think it's a Christian church, a Baptist church. Oh, right. I guess I shouldn't if, inside here we're teaching about paper airplanes and believing, in unicorns. You'd think, right? So we have that remade. We have this, of course, coming out. And I've covered the other stuff. They've redone Charmed. They're redoing the movie The Witches. We have, Magnificent coming out again. More witches, more Baphomet. Really can't make up how in our faces this stuff is. Yet people don't think twice about it. They just go, oh, it's a fairy tale. Oh, it's a kid's story. Oh, it's a fable. And what's the plot of the fairy tale here? That the witch is a cannibal who eats children. Yeah, that doesn't sound suspicious. And to lure children to her home is made of candy. This is another tactic that we've heard of, as far as ways that these predators lure children. But this is all just a huge coincidence, right? This is all just in my head and in your head. And that's why they constantly talk about it. That's why instead of calling it Hansel and Gretel, it's called Gretel and Hansel. Or are we doing that because it's more feminine, have the woman's name first? Is that why we're doing it? Or is it because of Aleister Crowley's law of reversals, doing things backwards? Pretty unbelievable, right? So you have your all-seeing eye in the trailer. You've got your house, which, was supposedly made of candy. It looks like a giant pyramid. And you get your pentagram, of course, and it's no big deal that there's a plot about witches wanting to eat kids, because we'd all know about it. We'd all hear about it, right? This stuff is just, it's all fairy tale. And of course, this is the type of stuff that they read to children I think that it's kindergarten to like third grade is where they, read these types of fairy tales, stories to kids. Hansel and Gretel and all this stuff. But everybody's familiar with Hansel and Gretel. It's been pushed into the public school system, that's for sure. What an absolute joke. Hopefully this thing's a bomb at the box office. But in general, it's a bomb. I'll tell you that much. What a joke. I thank you for listening to today's show. God bless all of you and your families.